Hello, everyone. Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching. I have another Monday quarterback video for you. This comes from Houston, Texas. A man approached officers when they were on a traffic stop. This guy was completely unrelated to the traffic stop that was going on. He just came completely out of, I won't say out of nowhere, but he just approached out of nowhere and told officers that he wanted them to shoot him. He pulled a gun, shot at the police, and the police, of course, had to return fire. The video that I'm playing comes from Houston government, Houston city government, in a news briefing on their officer-involved shooting. I'm going to play the video, and this video will be their part of their news release, and they produced a video for this, kind of explaining what went on and showing the body cameras. And then at the end of the video, when it goes off, they resume their normal press conference. I'm going to play it all the way up until the press conference part. I'm going to go back. I'm going to talk about things that I think that were done right and things that I thought were done wrong. And then I'm going to go to the news conference part itself after this video was played. And I'm going to play that because I think it's a really good news conference from the mayor and the city police officer, the city police chief down there in Houston. And I think they talked about some really good things in their news brief, and I thought it was a better press release from officials than what I've seen from other places. I think they pretty good speakers, and they talked about things that are pretty important. And when I play that part, I will talk about things they're talking about as well, because I can expound upon quite a few of those things. So without further ado, here we go.
I'm Assistant Chief Heather Morse of the Houston Police Department's Criminal Investigations Command. This critical incident briefing is intended to provide you with information about an officer-involved shooting that occurred in Houston in 2021. You are about to see video footage that is related to the case. HPD conducts thorough investigations into officer-involved shootings. These typically require investigators to interview multiple witnesses, view numerous hours of video footage, and analyze a significant amount of forensic evidence. It is important to note, we are in the very early stages of the investigation, and we continue to process additional evidence as it is collected, analyzed, and reviewed. A word of caution, the videos you are about to see can be graphic and may be difficult to watch. In addition, these videos may contain strong language and viewer discretion is advised. At about 1:24 a.m., HPD officers assigned to the South Gessner Division initiated a traffic stop in the 9400 block of Bissonnette. Approximately 22 minutes later, while officers were interviewing the occupants of the vehicle, a male, Zaquan Gullett, walked towards them from across the street. Sergeant Ricardo Rivera walked towards Mr. Gullett and asked, "Do you know them? Do you need something?"
You know them? You need some?
Mr. Gullett continued to approach the officers with his hands in his pockets and said, "Shoot me." Sergeant Rivera asked Mr. Gullett, "Why are you saying that?" Sergeant Rivera drew his gun and gave Mr. Gullett verbal commands to show his hands. Sergeant Rivera told Mr. Gullett to put the gun down. Other officers on the scene of the traffic stop also gave commands to drop the gun. Mr. Gullett pointed the gun at the officers and fired. Sergeant Rivera, Officer Colby Samashula, Officer Ricky McLemore, and Officer Moises Alfaro discharged their duty weapons.
What's that? Shoot you? Why are you saying that? Hey man, why are you talking like that? Bro, why are you talking like that? Get your hands out your pocket. Get your hand out your pocket. Hey, what's in your hand? Bro, put the gun down. Put the gun down. Put the gun. All right, cut it. Shots fired on this traffic stop over here with 17E30. It's gonna be unrelated. Are y'all okay? Check me, bro. Did he get a shot off? Yes, he did. Y'all okay? All right. Everybody's all right? Hey, is he hit?
I don't know if he hit, Sarge. Hey, sit.
Mills, was he hit?
Anybody hit? Nobody hit. Nobody hit.
Officer, okay, suspect's down.
Stay right there. Don't move.
We have the
Yeah. Okay, HSC out his location.
All right, hey, slowly, hey, this way.
I got you. 9400 missing that. Any more units in 9400?
Slowly, hey, get in line, slow down, get in line. Shoulder to shoulder.
Behind you, Sarge.
Okay, get in line with me, don't get behind me, get in line with me.
I'm along with you.
That's clear. Is she breathing?
Still breathing. Where's the gun?
Okay, he's still breathing.
Should be right there.
We're approaching, gonna
Don't
detain.
move. Do not move. Do not move. Stay still. Do not move.
Where's the gun? Where's the gun?
I don't know.
Okay. Okay.
Behind him.
Okay.
Don't move.
Secure
Do
it.
not move.
Secure
Do
it.
not move.
Secure it. Okay.
Come secure it.
Y'all come on.
Roger. Shot for 9400 missing that suspect.
Who does? Grab it. Hey, put your hands out. Get your hands out your pocket.
Get down.
Oh gosh, what we got here? Bro, hey, put your hand down. Put your hand.
She's fine.
Hey, check me, bro. Did he get a shot off?
He got
Y'all all right?
He's pointing at me, dude.
Everybody's all right? We good. I don't know if he's hit, Sarge. Hey, sit down. Was he hit? Anybody hit? Nobody hit. Hey,
I'm good. I'm good.
Nobody's hit.
Oh gosh, what we got here?
Put your hand down. All right.
She's fine. Get down.
Get down.
Are y'all okay?
Check me, bro. Did he get a shot off?
Yeah, he's shot.
Y'all all right?
Hey, Colt.
Everybody's all right?
We're good.
I don't know if he's hit, Sarge.
Hey, stay down. Anybody hit? Nobody hit.
Hey, is he hit?
I'm good.
Is he hit?
No,
Stay right there.
nobody's hit. Hey, put your hands out. Get your hands out.
Get down. Do not move.
Okay.
Come secure it.
Y'all come on.
Shot for 5
He's got a first aid kit.
Officers rendered first aid until Houston Fire Department paramedics arrived and transported Mr. Gullett to the hospital, where he was pronounced deceased. A gun and a spent ammunition casing were located next to Mr. Gullett.
All right, so that's the end of the video that they had made. And past this point, it is a press release. So before I get into the press release, I will go back into the video. And start from the very beginning of that video, not this one. So they're on a stop dealing with someone, and this guy just comes out of nowhere. Well, not really out of nowhere, but I mean, he just at random approaches them from the side and starts saying, "Shoot me."
You know them?
Go ahead and drop the volume down just a little bit.
Mr. Gullett continued to approach the officers with his hands in his pockets and said, "Shoot me."
Shoot you? Why you saying that? Hey man, why you talking like that? Bro, why you talking like that? Get your hands out your pocket. Get your hand out your pocket.
So he notices the gun.
Hey, what's in your hand? Bro, put the gun.
He automatically clears his hands to go to a two-handed pistol grip. That's great. He jettisoned an unnecessary object from his hand to be able to get two hands on his gun. That is a good thing to do. Either he just intuitively did this, excuse me, I can't talk, or he has trained and practiced to do this, where you just drop things out of your hand that you're not going to need when you have to go shoot. Drop the flashlight. Flashlight's still turned on and it's rolling around. That happens. Would have been better if the flashlight was off, because it does roll all the way around. Yeah, it would have been better if the flashlight was off, but I mean, I can't fault him. Split second thing. At least he cleared his hands of an object so he could get two hands on the gun. Now, that gun, mind you, I can pause it just when it comes out. And I've mentioned this before. See if I can catch it.
Get your hand out your pocket. Hey, what's in your hand?
Well, he's sometimes it is hard to catch the pause just in time, but he brings that gun up. It's already out. It's in a low ready. You can see it right there. And he's about to punch it forward. And this is probably the best pause I'm going to get. Take note of the fact that he has a red dot on the top of his pistol. As I've said before, I am starting to notice this is a increasing trend. I'm seeing more and more red dots show up on officers' guns. Not like an exponential increase. It's not like it's like kaboom, spreading like wildfire. But it is something I've noticed, is there are more red dots popping up here and there. Have not done a video exclusively on red dots yet, but I will be doing a video on red dots. Stay tuned for that.
Bro, put the gun down.
He gets his gun up. They start issuing loud verbal commands for him to drop the gun. Obviously, he doesn't, and he actually brings the gun up, the suspect does, and he shoots at them. He fires one round off. And again, it's hard to pause the video right at the right moment, just from the YouTube app. But he fires at them, and they fire back. So 4 officers in total fire at this guy. Well, I won't say exactly 4 total, 4 involved in the shooting, but multiple of them fire. And one thing that I want to note, and I'll play it again, I want you to pay attention to the road right here. All right? Pay attention to the road. I'm going to back it up about 5 seconds. Hit play. Look at the road. Watch it. Boom, right there. So that's rounds someone's bullets are hitting the ground right there. Now, it could have been his. I don't know. I think he only got one round off. But someone over here is firing, and they missed him completely, and they hit the ground, and it ricocheted who knows where. And if you look way across the street over here, I cannot tell for sure, but that looks like that might be a person behind the vehicle over there, kind of watching these events unfold. Or it could just be a part of the building. It's hard to tell from the distance what it is, but I think it's a person kind of watching what's going on. If it's not, still, there are other vehicles over there. There's a gas station. So this really illustrates the importance of marksmanship and not skimping out on firearms training. Um, and I'm guilty of it myself, not going to the range as much as I should. Um, but you should make that effort to get out and practice because shooting skills are perishable skills. Um, and in the law enforcement world, that's pretty prevalent. That's pretty noticeable. And unfortunately, in the law enforcement world, there are budget constraints when it comes to training, and some agencies just cannot shoot a whole lot for training. Some agencies will only provide enough ammunition to do what they call their qualifications, and each agency is different. They may only qualify once a year, and their qualification may consist of the officers going out to the range and they fire their guns at different distances from 10 yards to or from 7 yards to 15 yards to 25 yards, and standing, kneeling, one-handed, doing a reload in there, etc. They may have something like that set up that they got to go through those hoops, so to speak. They shoot from a standing position at 7 yards, go to a kneeling, shoot with one-handed, dominant hand and non-dominant hand, and then they do it at a different distance and so forth. And they may fire somewhere between 50 to 100 rounds max, something like that. And then some agencies may do qualifications twice a year. There may be some agencies that have more things in that qualification that they do, and it's still at least only 1 or 2 times a year. And then some agencies, they do it every quarter. If they can do it every quarter, that's awesome, that's great, but that's going to be larger agencies with a larger budget. A lot of your agencies out there just do not have nice big budgets, and so they can't really afford to go out and shoot a whole lot. And there are many police officers who the only reason they have a gun is because their employer gave it to them. If it were not for the fact that their employer gave them a gun, they wouldn't have it. They don't care about guns. So there's not very many cops who are gun people, so to speak. A lot of them, they're kind of indifferent to guns. They don't really care about them. They just carry it because work gave it to them. If they were to quit being a police officer the next day and had to turn their gun in, chances are some of them probably wouldn't go buy a gun just to have it. And with that kind of mindset in place, when it comes to training for firearms, they don't go above and beyond just what the agency provides to them. So they'll go through the initial training at their academy or whatever, and then when they get back, they'll keep up with the qualifications and the in-service training. But when it comes to spending money on their own dime, most of them are not doing it. They're not going to go to some other shooting school and learn new skills and become more proficient. They're not going to go out on the range on their own and shoot. So you have lots of officers out there who just, the only time they shoot is when the department makes them shoot. They don't go shoot out on their own. Then you do have some officers who do go out and shoot on their own, and they are a little bit more proficient. Unfortunately, they are way, way, way outnumbered by those who don't. Some agencies who have the money will let their officers go shoot almost at any time. They'll give them, an X amount of ammo to be able to expend through in a quarter or yearly basis, whatever. And kudos to them because that's pretty good. Unfortunately, other agencies just cannot afford it. Now, you could see all the other pistols from the officers. This sergeant guy, he has a red dot on his pistol, and the fact that he cleared his hand so quickly and just jettisoned that flashlight and he went on target, he's got his red dot on that pistol, and he does give pretty good commands throughout it. He seems pretty cool, collective, and in charge. He's not freaking out or anything. That kind of tends to make me believe that this guy, he does go above and beyond just what the department provides to him. I would not be surprised to hear that this guy is a quote unquote gun guy. You know, he has other guns other than what his employer gave him, and he actually goes out and buys ammo on his own and buys things on his own to be a better professional. It's just a gut feeling I got. I don't know it for sure, but it's something I suspect.
Slowly. Hey, hey.
Go to the other camera angle.
Okay, get in line with me.
Now,
Get
what's
behind me.
interesting to note, and I'll back it up just a little bit more,
Get in
guy's
line.
duty belt. Let's back it up. So check over here to the right. Just watch these two officers. My cursor is circling. Hit play and watch them as they're sidestepping. One of them looks like he has his duty belt
Get in
all the
line. Slow
way
down. Get in line.
undone, and it's only hanging on because of his
Slow down,
belt
soldier.
keepers, and you can kind of see what looks like the buckle of his belt. Um, I'm assuming that he started to check himself after those rounds were fired, trying to see if he'd been shot or something. Um, that was an equipment failure from him moving and all that, and the belt just came apart or came loose or something like that. Um, I'm not 100% sure what's going on there. If it is an equipment failure, then that's an issue. It could be his gear has been in use for too long. It needs to be decommissioned and get new stuff, or a crappy belt was bought and it was that just crappy belt and it failed. So gear it is an important factor in
Get
this
in line
type
with
of
me.
line of
Get in line.
work.
Get in
You
line
need
with me.
quality stuff, and
Suspect
if that belt had failed on him, and that's the reason why it's kind of dangling on him, then I
Slow
would
breathing.
I would really like to know what belt it was. But again, I'm not really sure if it was a belt failure or if he had
Where'd you
been
go?
trying to check himself for
Where'd you go?
injuries and then didn't have time to put the
Okay.
belt all the way back on.
Secure it. Secure it. Y'all come on.
Project, shot was expired.
I think it's from this camera view, this Mecklemore guy. I think it's his belt that's come loose. And I'm almost leaning towards it could have been an equipment failure because this guy hits the ground. Boom. But we don't see right off the bat if his belt's dangling or not. The shadow right there didn't look like his belt was dangling, so
Oh gosh,
I'm
what we
not
got here?
not really sure what's going on with the belt there. Let's see if we can catch it on a different view. Now, the Macklemore guy is the guy you just kind of saw. Oh no, not now, not this guy, kind of thing, that kind of attitude.
Bro,
He's the one who dives behind the
put your hands
vehicle.
down. Put your hands.
She's fine. She's fine. She's fine.
Did he get a shot off?
He got
Y'all all right?
He's pointing at me, dude.
It's all right? We good. We good. I don't know if he's hit, Sarge. Hey, sit. Was he hit? Anybody hit?
Nobody hit. Nobody hit.
Nobody hit. I'm good. I'm good.
Oh gosh, what we got here?
can only imagine what these people over here, what they were thinking when all this like just suddenly happened. I can only imagine the fear that came over them when they just all suddenly just started hearing all this yelling and then gunfire. Um, Talk about an ass pucker moment.
Yeah, we're good. We're good. Nobody hit. Nobody hit.
So they communicate back and forth, trying to determine if any one of them have been injured. So they had to fight. Of course, he's gone down. They've assessed. I can only assume that they're only scanning towards the front. None of them appear from these camera angles and these short amounts of video. None of them appear to do a 360 scan, look all around them. Uh, but if they didn't, then they should have. And of course, there's no top offs. It didn't appear to be any top offs on there. No reloads of the magazines or anything like that. Um, but they were talking to each other, communicating pretty well. The sergeant was being a sergeant. He's being in charge of the whole matter, taking the lead on it, and they were assessing whether or not any of them had been injured, and doing that before they went to go deal with that guy. So good on that.
Hey, put your hands out. Get your hands out.
So one thing, it's just interesting to note that out of all the officers there who are right here standing, um, I think you do see one jump out of this vehicle and kind of run around to the front to get over here. But of all these right here, the ones who are kind of out in the open and saw this guy approaching and everything, the guy from this camera view just kind of like took off and got behind the vehicle. So you could look at that in two different ways. Either A, you could say this guy was being smart and going to cover, or you could say that this guy was running away from the fight. I'll leave that one up to you on what you think was going on there.
Do not move. Okay.
Of course, there's the gun that the guy had.
He's got a first aid kit.
Officers rendered first aid until.
And so they talk about doing first aid. Now, I've talked about medical before, and I'll talk about it again. If you carry the tools to induce trauma, you need to carry the tools to reduce trauma. If you carry a gun as a profession or as a daily life choice, you recognize the fact that you could be involved in a gunfight. And reasonably minded people would say that a gunfight means it takes two to tango and bullets can fly both directions, and that means you could be shot in a gunfight. Duh, right? You need to carry medical gear on you in the event that happens, or in the event that a family member, a coworker is injured from that gunfight. EMS takes a while to get there, and a person can bleed to death before EMS gets there. You need to have those tools and the knowledge to render aid after a deadly physical encounter. Now, it doesn't really go into full detail about the first aid that they provided for this guy. It doesn't go into what they used or didn't use or anything like that. So I have no idea if any of them um, were able to pull any medical gear off their person, or if they had to get medical gear out of their vehicles. If they had to get medical gear out of their vehicles, then lucky for them, the vehicles were right there. But you should have medical gear on you so you can use it at moment's notice and not have to go to a vehicle to go get it and render aid to someone. Now, As far as the shooting and everything, it looks like a clear case of suicide by police. This guy looked like he wanted to die. He requested for the officers to shoot him. Um, that happens a lot. And since I started doing these videos, quite a few of them that I've done, it appears as though these people, they wanted to die. And it's unfortunate that they forced those officers in those positions to do it, but it happened. And these officers, in this particular case and in the other cases, they acted lawfully. They didn't do anything against the law. They acted within the scope of the law and the scope of their practice, and they didn't violate this guy's rights or anything. In fact, it's the opposite. This guy violated their rights, and he brought it upon himself. Um, Tactics wise, I thought everything looked good. I really liked the fact that he dropped that flashlight out of his hand, cleared his hands, and got a good two-handed grip. I liked their communications with each other. I liked the sergeant taking charge and leading them and whatnot. The only thing I would have liked to have seen would be more scanning after the shooting, people actually looking around all 360, make sure some other nutbag isn't coming up, and then top off magazines after that, because you never know if they're going to get back into the fight or not, and you don't know how many rounds you fired, etc. And then, like I said, I'm going to leave it up to you all to enter your opinion on what you thought I believe his name was Macklemore, what he was doing. Was he going for cover behind that vehicle, being smart, or was he just running away from the fight? I'll leave that one up to you. Uh, Moving on. So at the end of the video starts the rest of the news briefing. So before the video is played, they were talking at the podium, and they just laid the podium down to play the video against the wall. And now they're going to resume that news briefing. I watched it and I liked it. And let me get readjusted here. And there were some things that I wanted to expound upon. So I'm going to play this news briefing, and then when it gets to talking points, I'll pause and I'll talk about those things, and then I'll continue on.
So we'll answer questions.
I mean, it looked like everybody did what they were supposed to do. I mean, can you say yet whether or not?
Now, you cannot hear the people asking questions very well, but you can hear, of course, the chief and the mayor when they're at the podium talking through the microphone. At the very beginning, the chief, he's not as loud as he will get, but his audio improves. The people asking questions, you can barely hear what they say.
You know, they did what they were supposed to.
I'm not going to comment on that right now. I said, and I want to be going forward, because we're going to release these things. I want to be really careful and respect family members, our officers, and other citizens until this investigation is complete. Then that's when I'll make that statement on that. Today, I want to celebrate us keeping our word, and as a community, we're releasing this, and I think that's a good thing for everybody.
Has his family seen the video?
I think they have, yeah. I know they've been notified.
Chief, you said earlier that you wanted the families to look at this, that you wanted the citizens to look at this. What questions do you want them to ask themselves as they watch this? To evaluate that transparency?
Ted, you never know what's going on in people, in their minds, but ideally, you want people to be objective and see it from all sides. And when there's an officer-involved shooting, it's so tragic for everybody involved, regardless of what happens. So look at it objectively and make sure that we have healing in our community, and make sure people come to the truth. And because different people carry different narratives that causes problems. That's what frustrates me. But every person has the right to think what they want to. But we're going to do the right thing in Houston up under the mayor's leadership, releasing this. And we've been saying this, and today it's here.
And towards that celebration of transparency that you talked about, there are always unfortunate incidents. how much harder will it be when one of these has a lot more gray area involved?
You call it as it is, man. I'm not here as a chief to take up for anybody. I'm a straight shooter. And that's what people know me to be for 54 years in Houston, 31 years as a police officer. If the police officers are wrong, they're wrong. If the citizen is wrong, they're wrong. And we're just going to call them as we see them. Now, I think there's lessons learned because you know that we look at critically every shooting incident. So whatever we can do to prevent those shootings, that's what we want to do. The sanctity of life is the most important thing. Anybody else?
Can we have the identity of the suspect again and his age?
I'll get that to you. We'll send it to you. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Are the officers still working or are they still patrolling?
They're still on administrative duty. We want to make sure that everything is okay with them before we put them back on the line, and we have a process and policy on that. So they're not back on right now. It's just been I'm a little sleep deprived. I think it's been right over two weeks or right at 2 weeks. Yeah. Okay.
And how many were there?
It's 4 officers. Yeah.
And Chief, what does this change? I mean, this is a different tack. This is a different way of releasing these. But what changes today?
I just want to celebrate it. I think our citizens have been asking for it. The mayor promised it, and it's here. I don't think it changes anything. It's just a move forward. That's what we said we were going to do, and there was a lot of talk. Y'all know that. Like we're not going to release it, but we're going to release it. Mayor, do you want to say something?
What it does do, and I think what's important, and what we've learned from all over the country, it's important for us to be transparent. It's important for us to make the information available, because what happens sometimes is that when information is not made available, then people assume that something must have been wrong, or we're hiding something. By coming forth and releasing these videos within 30 days, and as you can see, even sooner than 30 days, this happened on May 21st, so let's say 2 weeks ago. It's about establishing the trust between the community and our police officers. And we have 5,300 police officers who are patrolling 640 square miles. The police officers need the community, and the community need the police officers. And in order to enhance and have a positive relationship, transparency is a key component of that, and winning people's trust. So hopefully, and again, my condolences go out.
So I'll pause right here to talk about transparency. And he's right. Transparency is a great policy to have. And I think that a lot of agencies out there don't have a lot of great transparency. And you see this especially when it comes to open records requests. Some places like to play cat and mouse games with the citizens in their community and make it hard for them to get records. And I find that to be a little troublesome. Now, granted, if it's an open investigation, yeah, by all means, don't release documents out of an open investigation that could give a criminal an advantage on, escaping arrest or something like that. But if it's a closed case, it's done. Or it looks like there's not really much anything else that can happen as an outcome in this case, by all means, those records should be available for the community to look at. Don't care what paper it is, what picture it is, what video it is, they should be available for the people to look at. And, and in some cases, it's not going to matter how soon the records get released, because some people are just going to say stupid shit anyway and make accusations. So the transparency issue, yes, it can be great, but in some cases, you could be as transparent as a window without a window in it, no glass, and people are still going to make shit up, still going to make false accusations, and completely disregard all the evidence there in front of them and go with their own narrative. And I like the fact that he did talk about, people having their own narrative, and that is the truth. There are some people who have their own narrative and they don't give a shit what evidence is out there that proves them wrong, proves their narrative wrong. They stick with their narrative and they go with it, and they spread falsehoods. But transparency is an extremely important thing. Um, when it comes to this line of work, and just not just this line of work, but in society as a whole. The people have a right to know what the government is doing for the most part, as long as it doesn't jeopardize safety. So, for example, the CIA, stuff like that. Yeah, I'm not down for them releasing all their stuff, because that's going to jeopardize or potentially jeopardize our safety later on down the road. But the police, um, getting involved in a shooting, yeah, that's not going to like jeopardize my safety later on down the road. That's not releasing any national secrets. Those videos, those documents need to be released. People need to be able to look at it to see what's going on. And I think that if agencies were quicker to release footage and release documents and stuff like that, then it would, I'm not going to say 100% all across the board, but it would, for the most part, stop a bunch of bullshit from starting, stop a bunch of rumors from snowballing and becoming into one big, huge snowball, um, and causing a lot of issues. I think right from the get go, if they were to release information, release footage or whatever, that would stop the rumor mill and the big snowballs from forming. But unfortunately, there are some agencies that want to play the cat and mouse games, and um, that's wrong of them. And it's interesting because he talks about transparency. That in some places may release a video, but when you try to give them an open records request on something else, they'll fight you tooth and nail over it and give you bullshit answers and excuses and what have you. And then some places just completely ignore it altogether. Um, so I've been kind of paying attention to Kentucky State Police open records, and with through them and I think it's WDRB news station, and like WLKY maybe, and WAS 11 places up around Louisville. Um, yeah, like KSP plays games with people when it comes to open records, and there's other agencies like that. I know Bowling Green Police has played games when it comes to open records, um, and it's bullshit. It shouldn't be like that. But anyway, moving on.
Even to the person who lost his life. But hopefully this will let people know that in this city, we're going to do as best we can to establish that trust and build a positive relationship between the police and the community, because quite frankly, one can't live without the other.
Absolutely. One cannot live without the other. And I don't know the politics of Houston. Um, and I should probably have researched it before I start talking about all this stuff. But I mean, based off the way they're talking, they don't seem to be on this defund the police bandwagon. Um, I hope they're not. And I would find it almost a little, hard to believe based off all this stuff I'm hearing from him. But then again, that could be true. They could be on the defund the police bandwagon, and he's just a political head talking and saying the things that people want to say. But he hit the nail on the head. The two can't live without each other. And with all this talk of defund the police, yada yada yada, it's that coupled with COVID, and they'll talk about COVID here in a second. That has created a recipe for disaster in this country, and they'll talk about violence, and major violence is starting to see an uptick all across the country. More violent crimes are occurring.
Okay. Thank you all.
Any other questions for the mayor or the chief?
I just have an additional question.
Go ahead.
All officers wear bulletproof vests?
Yes. Okay.
Can you
It's all right.
possibly explain, the one officer, I saw him kind of go behind a
Yeah.
car.
I'm not gonna explain or go into that right at this point. Okay, that investigation is going, and I'm gonna be respectful of that process. And when it's over, and if we got to come back and then explain some things, I'll be willing to do that, but not now.
Chief, do you hope this will give folks sort of behind-the-scenes look at what you guys face on these types of calls? I mean, this went from 0 to 100 in
That's part of it. The mayor talked about the trust building, and that's huge. But also, it gives people a different perspective to see how things can happen in a split-second decision, and our officers have to make those decisions. And it's not as easy as people think. And I know it's tragic when anybody is seriously hurt or lose their life, but that's policing, and we want to.
And he brings up a good point that I think so many people fail to realize is quick second decisions having to be made right then and there. There's no time to think and debate and come up with different options. A decision has to be made right then and there. If you make the wrong decision, you die. If you don't make a decision soon enough, you die.
Make sure those numbers go down. We do everything we can, but this is a violent nation right now. So,
Chief, let's stick with that topic for a moment. Violent crime in Houston. When you took over on April,
make sure everybody's through with this one, and then we'll get to that one. And I'm not going anywhere. I just want to make sure is everybody through with the body worn camera, and then we can move to violent crime. Yeah. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
when you took over as chief on April 6th, the city had approximately 105 homicides. Now we're up to 192 on the brink of 200. What, if anything, have you done differently?
Look, I'll check those numbers for you because I don't know if that's correct. But look, anytime a citizen gets killed in our city, it's a problem. The homicide numbers are up just as any other city, major city right now. And we're not going to use that as an excuse. I was talking to the mayor and and let me thank our executive team for being here. We had a meeting just before we came in here. I don't want to use the excuse of what's going on in other areas, in other cities. We're the city of Houston, and we want to be the best that we can do. So you asked what we've done. We've moved troops around. We increased our homicide investigators. We did a lot of different things. But I said that I wouldn't be negative on other parts of the criminal justice system, and I'm going to hold my word. But let me tell you something. When you don't have trials for 2 years, and you got all these violent criminals out here running around, I'm not blaming anybody right now. COVID rolled in, and before COVID, it was Hurricane Harvey. So I'm not going to let all our officers take that blame, but a lot of great initiatives. And I'll tell you this one thing. I'm not one chief that's going to be telling you everything that we're doing, because crooks look at the news as well. And I want to respectfully say that.
How have your
Two good points right there. The bad guys, they collect intel as well. And talking about COVID knocking courts out. So in their particular situation, they also had a hurricane apparently that wrecked their courts, and then COVID hit. But for the rest of the country, for the most part, COVID has put courts out for damn near a year. And that has played hell within the system. Because if you have people who are being charged with serious things and they're able to meet bail and do some of those functions through Skype court, they can get out and be released. And someone, who was arrested in the summer of last year, they haven't really been, they've technically had some type of court appearance, whether it be, indictment, arraignment, preliminary hearing, whatever. But as far as like actual jury trials or anything like that, nothing's been happening as far as jury trials up until here recently for the majority of the country. And, someone arrested in the summer of last year for something violent, they're probably already out on bail and out and about and doing stuff. That coupled with lots of police agencies having staffing issues all across the nation, lots of people retiring, people quitting in some cities to go work for other agencies because, the agents that they left, the morale sucked, what have you. And then not having large numbers of people knocking on the door saying, hey, give me an application. That, all those ingredients are coming together, and it is creating a very violent um, landscape out there, and especially in your larger cities, places with large urban areas, uh, large areas of impoverished neighborhoods, people low socioeconomic areas, lots of drugs. I mean, there's lots of violence going on. City of Louisville here in Kentucky, dang. Um, I mean, just a violent place. I have really no desire to go visit that area in Kentucky anymore, just based off all the crap that's going on. And then, just down the road from us, Nashville, Tennessee, all the crap that's going on there. I'm not really all that motivated to want to go down there either. Um, and the hell with going to some place like New York or Los Angeles. It's going to be a while before I decide to go visit some place like that. Crime is it's going through the roof, it seems like now. And it's not just, little crimes, it's also violent crimes. And yeah, it hurts when the courts have been shut down for a while. And on top of that, it hurts when the courts do stupid shit even when they're up full and running and let people out when they shouldn't be letting them out and giving them sweet deals and get them low bonds and crazy crap. And then when the courts aren't working, that's just even bigger recipe for disaster right there.
Expectations on how you would handle the homicide crisis been different from the actual reality that we're facing?
We know I've been a cop for 31 years, and we know traditionally summer is coming, and I said that in a couple of my interviews. So
Summertime. I don't. That's true. When summertime comes in big cities, body counts go up. Temperature goes up. So does the number of bodies.
we know that. Now let's back up to this past weekend. Have I saw 13 homicides over the holiday weekend? No. I think maybe back when I first got on, in the early 90s, late 80s. But I just don't remember it right now in the recent time. So we got to just hang in there as a community. The mayor and our team, we talked about clubs, okay, nightclubs. We're still at the end of a pandemic, so I want to meet with the owners sometime next week, because you cannot have people going into clubs when the violence is up like this and everybody's going in there with guns and you don't have a metal detector or some kind of handling system. And I'm not blaming them. I'm just telling you, I'm the kind of chief.
You know what? I will. I'll fucking blame him. He brings up a really good point, and this could actually be a whole video in and of itself, but I'll touch a little bit on it. So bars and nightclubs, a lot of them skimp on security. They will avoid hiring a company. They will try to do in-house security. They'll just hire someone, pay them cash, and throw a T-shirt on them, and they'll be ran by the owner or the manager of this bar or nightclub who does not have any prior experience in the security field. So it would be the same as taking your manager at McDonald's and having that manager in charge of security for the McDonald's um, property, or your store manager at Walmart being in charge of loss prevention, making all the decisions for them, instead of having a person in charge of loss prevention who has experience in that stuff. So when it comes to bars and nightclubs, it's usually the owner or the manager who make decisions regarding security. And these people have no experience in that field whatsoever. Yeah, they might have owned a bar for a couple of years and kind of learned by trial and error and figured out, a couple things need to be done. But other than that, they don't know anything about security, crowd management, what have you. And they are looking at things from a profit mindset. So they're not going to typically go hire a company to provide those services. They are going to find the cheapest route possible, and they will recruit from their clientele. And in a lot of these places, um, places that cater to more hip hop rap music, those kind of places will just, like I said, hire from their own clientele, the people who just come there as customers, and they'll try and pick the biggest people out of that group to be their security. And they will not have any care whatsoever what kind of training that person has had or has not had. Most likely, no training whatsoever. They might have some experience fighting in the streets, but they don't have any training or anything like that in anything else. And they may have a criminal background. They may be felons. And now I don't know about Texas and their laws, but I know in Kentucky, per Kentucky law, people working in a bar cannot be a felon. Now, do bars follow that rule? Not all of them. Some of them do hire felons. And that's where it comes down to an enforcement issue. Is why isn't the local police or the ABC officer checking into that kind of stuff and taking action against an establishment for hiring felons? That's a lack of policing, in my opinion. The police not doing their job, maybe being a little lazy. But they'll hire these people, and the mayor will touch on it here in a little bit, but he'll talk about how they'll pat the men down, but they won't pat the women down. And that happens quite a bit in places. All the men will get patted down, but the women won't. And that's a huge issue. So you got obviously the men giving the women the weapons, and the women bring the weapons in. They just hand it to the men right there on the dance floor or at the table, or wherever they may be in the building. And now the men have the guns. They're all liquored up, and they are aggressive, and fights happen, and gunshots ring out. So bars and nightclub owners and managers, yeah, I'll put the blame on them for these type of things happening in their establishments. If they truly gave a damn about their customers, they would hire actual security to manage their establishment. I had a contract once at it's not in operation anymore, but it was a hookah lounge, and this hookah lounge happened to cater to the hip hop rap crowd. And on weekends, they would have a DJ and would play all rap music. That was it. It was just nothing but rap music. So that crowd came into that place. And for our town, there was no other, at that time, there was no other place for that crowd to go to. There was a place prior to that called Chocolate City, and that is where all the hip hop rap crowd went to. And that place had shut down because there had been so much stupid shit going on there, like, I don't know, murders and shootings. They shut down, and there was really no place for that crowd to go to. That hookah place opened up and started doing DJ things on the weekends, and it kind of just became the rap hip hop crowd hangout. Had the contract for that property, and um, I approached it with a very progressive stance on security. So, no lingering, loitering out in the parking lot. If you come to that bar, then you need to be in the bar. There's no sense to be hanging outside. So we hit people up on that pretty hard. Obviously, no drinking or doing drugs out in the parking lot. Um, Everyone was patted down, male and females, and they were patted down almost to the same degree that you would get a pat down at TSA, going through the airport. And some people, they even have to kick their shoes off to be, thoroughly patted down, bags thoroughly searched. zero tolerance for shenanigans. People started acting stupid and disrespectful towards the security staff. They were either suspended from coming from that establishment, or they were just flat out banned from ever coming back again. And I am proud to say that at that venue, there were zero acts of violent crimes when we were on property. The only violent crime that occurred was after hours when we had left the property. It was after 2 a.m. and the owner, or not the owner, but the manager was still inside, cleaning the place up and doing the nightly audit on the cash register, counting the money, and some people came in and robbed them. That was the only act of major violence on that property, and we weren't even there to stop it. They obviously had paid attention and knew when we left to hit the place. But when we were on property, no shootings, none, not a fucking one. And we were there for over a year, and nothing major happened. I mean, there were some fist fights, but other than that, nothing major happened. And some of the people in this crowd who came to this venue were the same ones who went to those other places where there had been shootings. And some of the ones who were in this crowd who came to this establishment who have since then been involved in murders, have been involved in other types of crimes. So they had the mindset, so to speak, to be able to do those crimes. They just didn't commit them at that establishment that I was in charge of. And I would contribute the owner wanting to have, he actually wanted security there. He wasn't the type who just wanted someone wearing a t-shirt, looking to be, like their security. He wanted an actual security team there. And we delivered that service. And like I said, I'm proud to say that there were zero acts of major violence in that place. Now, other places in town, obviously, yeah, there's been major acts of violence. But when you look at the security in those places, it's t-shirt security. It's just dudes wearing t-shirts. That's it. That's all they are. People with no experience, no training. If they do have kind of some experience, it's maybe because they've been doing security for like a year. And as far as, fighting goes, the only experience they got is being in fights themselves out in the streets. They've never taken any combative training or anything like that, or control techniques to limit and mitigate any injuries to the people they're dealing with. So, like I said, I hold bars and nightclubs responsible for violent acts that occur on their premises because they're cheap and they skimp out on security. Think I've touched on that. Like I said, that topic could be a whole video in and of itself. And you know what? I actually might end up making a video on that kind of stuff and show some photos and videos from the hookah lounge. Anyway, moving forward.
That I'm going to try to grab everybody and work together. First, I'm going to hold myself accountable, but everybody else in this picture.
If I can,
go ahead, Mayor.
Yeah. Let me just say, we are still coming out of this coronavirus, but even in this city, in this county, we are having to rebuild the criminal justice ecosystem. Because if you all can recall, after Hurricane Harvey, some of our criminal courts were affected by Harvey and literally shut down. And then over the last 14 months, you have had not many cases at all in the court system. There are about 100,000 cases backlogged right now. So you're having to put together now the criminal justice ecosystem, which means you got to have now more jury trials. They've got to open up. City employees, for example, return as of this week. And so it's now time for the whole criminal courthouse system to open up as well, to reduce significantly the backlog. So that's on one front. Then what we are finding, for example, is that you've got gang activity coming from all over. and not just within the United States, but even coming outside. So we're having to deal with that. And a lot that's connected to that is a lot of narcotics and drugs. All of that's played into in the key. And if you notice, we've seen more domestic violence situations than we've seen in the last several years. You've seen more road rage. There are a lot of in different categories where you've seen more than it has ever been on so many different fronts. And so we are having now to really focus in investing in communities, investing in neighborhoods, dealing with people who have lost their jobs, dealing with people who are facing anxiety and stress. That's one of the reasons why, for example, we've a lot of focus on crisis intervention. So there are a lot of elements that we're having to address in order to reduce the criminal element and be laser focused on it. And we're going to have to work our way through it. And it's also going to require the active engagement of people within our community. Now, the reality is, Chief said he didn't want to use that excuse, and I won't use that excuse, but this is not a Houston phenomenon. It is a national phenomenon. And it's happening across the country. Having said that, our primary focus is on the city of Houston. This is where we are. This is what concerns people the most. And so we're being very intentional. That's why City Council voted to add another cadet class. Instead of 5, now there are 6. And then the crisis intervention initiatives and all of the other initiatives that we are putting forth to get through it. We will get through it, but we're going to have to work through it. As we work through the end of this coronavirus and everything else that's been thrown at us, we're going to have to work through it. And it's going to take a little time for that to happen.
And Mayor, we've seen more overtime dollars spent on HPD since October of last year to cut down on the homicides, adding more investigators, more detectives. But then the numbers show it's not working. So why should families feel safe?
Well, I won't say that the numbers show that it's not working. It could always be much more worse. So if you're drawing that conclusion, then you're drawing an erroneous assumption, not based on a factual basis, so to speak. It's that there are many different things that are having to take place. There is no one solution. It's going to take a lot of elements in order to address the situation here. You have to invest and rebuild many of these communities and neighborhoods that have been ravaged by coronavirus and so many other elements. So you have to do that. You have to make investments. You have to put people back in a position so they can take care of their families. We do need more mental behavioral health funding. Those things are needed. You had a guy that walks up and said, for whatever, shoot me. So what's the underlying element behind that? So we do need more mental behavior funding. We do need more funding for substance abuse. We're addressing the homelessness issues. Domestic violence is very serious. And when I look at the numbers, and I look at them, for a significant number of cases, especially on these homicides, or when people are either knowing somebody or there's a relationship of some kind there. So let me just say to the general public in the city of Houston, 99% of people in the city of Houston are abiding by the laws, okay? And quite frankly, for a large percentage of the crimes that are taking place in our city, especially as it relates to homicide, it involves people who either know one another or there's some sort of relationship there. So people too have to assume some responsibility, and the whole community must play an active role.
So he touches on something that's not really discussed a whole lot. And when the news comes out that, there's a murder, someone was stabbed to death, in a town or whatever, I think a lot of people have this fear that, oh my God, there's a dude out there going around stabbing people. And people have this fear that they could be next. And I think and this goes back to a transparency issue. The police don't always release a whole lot of information. Some of that information obviously gets out, but it's slow to get out. And I don't think that people fully realize a lot of the times that a lot of these murders and things that happen, these violent crimes and things like that, they do occur between people who know each other, or there's some type of relationship between them.
But if you ask me whether or not this is a safe city, I'm gonna tell you absolutely hell yeah, it's a safe city.
I like this guy.
Yes, it's a safe city. Now, if you're focusing individually on every single crime that's taking place every day, and if that's what people are constantly hearing, then people are going to assume, oh my God. But for 99% of the people in this city that live in this city, that's doing business in this city, they're fine. They're fine. Now, if you're engaged in buying and selling drugs and the transaction goes bad, you should have been doing it in the first place. I started to say something else, but I went to church on Sunday.
This guy's a good public speaker. He really is. He speaks very well, and he cracks the jokes here and there when they're appropriate, and they're good jokes.
You shouldn't be doing it in the first place. Okay? For people engaged in domestic abuse and violence, no man or woman has the right to victimize or abuse somebody else. So that's a no-no. Okay? So when you look at the different categories that I look at every single day, and I look at these numbers every single morning, okay? Then you have to target your resources in those particular areas and you move them around. Now, with respect to clubs and nightclubs, I'll go even further than what Chief did, okay? People jam-packed. When you combine guns and booze and people in close proximity, bad things can happen. And so when nightclubs, for example, when they're checking to see whether the male comes in with a gun, but they're not checking to see whether the woman is coming in with a gun, and in some of these cases, the guns are passed to the woman, and they're coming into the clubs and then they're exchanging. Well, from a city council perspective, we're going to have to take a look at that. Okay.
And to further go on that, I do think that is something that local governments should control in some manner. They should, and this goes into the topic of how much control does the government need to have in private people and private entities. Obviously, we're all in agreement that there should be a health department, an entity that goes around and checks in on these restaurants who serve to the public to make sure they're not doing stupid shit like storing bleach above food, and the coolers actually work, and the ice machines aren't full of junk, and what have you. Like, I think we're all in agreement that we need that kind of service from the government, reaching its fingers into private people and private companies and making sure that they are being accountable and doing the things they're supposed to be doing. Because I can guarantee you that if it were not for the health department operating the way they do, there would be some places that would do some really nasty stuff and would not hold to a standard per health codes, and would have extremely dirty places, and would do that because if there was no one there to check it, then what do they care? But since there are people out there who come by and check it and it's enforced, they of course have to jump through the hoops and play by the rules. That's a good thing. So I think it's also pertinent that local governments also put their fingers, and this could be maybe a health code thing, I don't know, but they obviously reach their fingers into the bars and nightclubs and make sure that they are doing things that they're supposed to be doing in terms of safety and security. Yeah, they might go and check and make sure that the servers and stuff and the bartenders have their serving license, and that they're up to date on their liquor license, blah blah blah. Sure, that's nice, but what's this place doing on a night-to-night basis when it comes to security? Are they hiring some felon with no training whatsoever and throwing a T-shirt on them that says security and letting them police the crowd? Is that person taking, I wouldn't say bribes, but is that person taking money under the table from other people to allow underage people to come in, to allow people to come through the door without being harassed, aka searched like everyone else? Are they cool with certain people within, a neighborhood or a group and would allow them to come in with guns, but not allow another group to come in with guns? Um, those are questions that are important questions, and I do think that local governments should have more of a hand in managing what bars and nightclubs do in terms of how they operate their security. Because if they're going to have any say on whether or not they can be open based off health code um, violations or health code standards and having liquor licenses and stuff like that, they need to also include safety and security in that as well.
So you do as much as you can. It's not an easy situation. It's not a situation that the police officers are going to be able to get on top of by themselves. The community has to get all the way into this game, which means if you know somebody that's about to commit a crime or has committed a crime, I'm pleading with you to make the information available and then help us to do our jobs. And then we'll have an even safer city. Okay? So.
Yeah, I just, the mayor's plea is an eloquent plea and a truthful plea. First of all, on the video, I just want to say that truth.
I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think this person is Sheila Jackson. She's a representative in Texas in the Houston area.
Truth is cleansing and transparency is important. And I know you're still investigating, Chief, so I'll just leave it at that. This is an important step forward that is not done in many cities around the nation, which is one of the reasons why this legislation on George Floyd is legislation that we are working on. But more importantly, Mayor, there's a number of legislative initiatives that can help, that need to be done by the Congress, and I own up to it. We need to pass the Violence Against Women Act, which you know that I have led on, which provides funding to police officers, because you're right, the surge in domestic violence is overwhelming, and it now impacts children. Why is it every day that you're seeing some very
So, having a squirrel moment, unrelated to what she's talking about. Take a look at the chief's gun. Notice he has a funnel on the end of his magazine well right there. So that's not something that you typically see a whole lot. That's obviously not a stock option for most pistols. So that had to be added on there, and either he did it himself or he bought it like that with the intentions of having it on there for its purpose. So I don't know anything about this guy as far as him being a gun guy or not, but that's kind of leading me towards the thought of maybe this guy is a gun guy. Anyway, like I said, squirrel moment.
helpless and beautiful child being found in a terrible and violent end. How many times we're broken when we hear these stories and we ask the question why. But let me say something that we seem to fail to want to talk about in this state. And just 2 weeks ago, as the chair of the subcommittee, we held a hearing on guns. Two of the witnesses were gun violence victims, meaning one.
Now, at this point, I was almost ready to turn the video off and say to hell with her and her anti-gun bullshit. But I kept playing it, and I don't know much about her stance on guns, her political leanings. Most of these anti-gun people, I'm not going to say most of them. Some of these anti-gun people kind of approach things in a way that they don't make it seem as if they're completely anti-gun and want to take all the guns away. She could, in fact, be like that. She could be approaching it from, it's not a. She says, we're not attacking the Second Amendment. Or she doesn't say it verbatim like that, but she basically insinuates, not doing anything to affect the Second Amendment, but going after the people who use guns and violence and stuff like that. So she could be one of those politicians that's kind of approaching it from the sheep in wolf's clothing kind of thing. Like, oh no, we're not here to take all your guns. No, we just want to, address the people who use guns violently and blah blah blah, and then really have the intentions of, wanting to take all guns away. But at first, anytime I hear, gun violence, and it's coming from these political people who hate guns, it usually ends in that narrative of them talking about getting rid of guns. But I listened to her just for a little bit, just to kind of see what her thoughts were, and I'll hit play, and you can listen to the rest of what she's talking about.
One had lost her father to murder in her house. They were not involved in crime. They had a break-in. And the other representative, of course, was a father from Parkland. Just a few weeks ago, Santa Fe, which many of us remember, had its commemoration, the high school guns. So frankly, I think maybe we should do a story and recognize that these officers are dealing with guns everywhere. We can't make an assessment on this individual that tragically lost his life, but as was indicated, we pray for his family. He did say, shoot me. I don't know what the reason is. I wish he was still alive. But he had a gun. Guns are everywhere. And frankly, a state that is now joining a small list of states of permitless rights to guns, we're looking at that as a contributor to the violence.
So that statement right there kind of leads me to think that she's more anti-gun than what she later on, tries to play down. Just the way she said that. Now, she'll talk about here in a second where guns are coming from, and then I'll pause it and I'll talk about my thoughts on that.
Every aspect of violence that you are seeing on your news stations and you're reporting on, 99%, 95%, I'll be generous, are with guns. Where are these guns coming from?
Where are the guns coming from? They're coming from law-abiding citizens. That's where they're coming from. And you be scratching your head, well, what do you mean these guns are coming from law-abiding citizens and then being used in murders? What do you mean by that? I mean, these guns are purchased by law-abiding people. Now, there may be a small number of these people who just have not been caught by the police for something, and they don't have a felony record yet, and they are doing straw purchases for the criminals. That no doubt goes on. I don't think it's that high of a number, but that does go on in my opinion. So that's where some of the guns are coming from. They're coming from the law-abiding people who are friends with the criminals, and they buy them guns because, criminal 1 and 2 got felonies, and they can't go to a gun shop and buy them. The bulk of the other law-abiding citizens who buy guns, and then it ends up in the criminals, they buy these guns, but they don't store them properly. And she'll mention something about storing them. And that, in my opinion, is where the bulk of all these guns and these violent crimes are coming from. It's coming from the people who they go out and buy a gun for self-protection, and they leave it in the console of their car. The console's unlocked. It doesn't even have a lock on it. They leave it in the center console of their car, and their dumbasses leave the car unlocked. And some young person's going around car hopping, and lo and behold, they come across this car. They open it, start rummaging through, getting change, things in plain sight, and open up that center console. And what do you know? There's a pistol there. They steal it. It goes back into the streets. They might sell it for, couple $100, something like that, or trade it for drugs, whatever. And someone else gets a hold of it. It gets used in a shooting, what have you. Or someone buys this gun for protection and they leave it in the house, but they don't put it in a safe or anything. They just leave it in the nightstand. If it's a pistol, they leave it in the nightstand. They might leave it sitting on a dresser. If they have a shotgun or a rifle, they might have it sitting inside the closet, sitting behind the bedroom door. Well, they leave for work. They stay They're at work for 8 hours out of the day, so that means they leave anywhere from an hour to 30 minutes early from home to get to work. So that's and then the same commute getting back. So that's you know 9 hours, maybe 10 hours, depending on how long they got to drive. That they're away from the house every single day. So out of those 10 hours of the day, that gun's just sitting there, and it's accessible and operable to unauthorized people. Anyone could break in that home, get that gun, get access to it, and start using it. And that's where these guns are coming from. That's when she says where are these guns coming from, that's exactly where the bulk of them are coming from. They're coming from law abiding people who don't keep their gun on them. Instead, they keep it in the console of their car, or they keep it in the nightstand, or they keep it in the closet, and someone steals it and uses it in crimes. If you are not carrying your gun on you all the time, or if it's not within arm's reach, then you need to make your gun inaccessible or inoperable, or both, to unauthorized users. Stop leaving your fucking guns laying around for people to steal. And I don't want to hear any bullshit about, well, you're victim shaming. You're victim shaming. Fuck you. It's a valid point that if you leave your gun laying around and you make it easy for someone to steal, you are fucking the rest of us gun owners. You are giving more ammo to the anti-gun crowd to come after our guns.
Obviously, ATF will be getting, I'm sure, our direction on the issue of gun trafficking. But where and why are the guns? Guns not stored, easily accessible to 12-year-olds and 14-year-olds. So I think until we confront what these officers are also confronting, to at least have people stand down on the guns, and I think the mayor was generous, it's guns and alcohol in the clubs, or substance, and some disagreement that probably could have been resolved in the bright sunlight in a different way gets resolved at night with the guns coming out. And children losing their mothers and fathers. Parents losing their children. This gun culture, as everybody's head is down, somebody needs to do those kinds of stories because there are too many guns in the wrong hands. Until America gets around this, this city is right. The city, I see it from another perch, looking at the statistics across the nation. And this city does not compare to many other cities where the violence is rampant and the killings are continuous and the guns are rampant. But what has happened is it's predicted with a permitless process, there will be many people coming into Texas to sell guns and many people coming into Texas to buy guns. It's a gun violence culture that we need to address. Not the Second Amendment, but a gun violence culture that we need to address. And so I hope we can all work together on that aspect of violence.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That it?
So like I said, she said, it's not, I'll even replay it. We'll go back.
All work together. Second Amendment, it's a gun violence culture that we need to address. Not the Second Amendment, but a gun violence culture that we need to address.
All right. So, yeah, she may say that she's not one to attack the Second Amendment, but, she may have other motives, and she also may not want to attack the Second Amendment, but some of the things that she may want to come up with or ideas she wants to entertain or support may end up obviously hurting the Second Amendment. And when it comes to this is going to be a little sticky kind of topic because it will get people all up in arms, so to speak, and get people all in their feelings. When it comes to these murders, when he talks about these bars and nightclubs and these shootings and stuff like that, these things are predominantly occurring in places where hip hop and rap music is being played. I don't think that we have a rampant problem of honky tonk bars having shootings night after night. I don't think we have a problem where At country music concerts, there's people shooting each other in the parking lot. What we do have a problem is at hip hop and rap events, concerts, parties, people shooting at each other. That is a part of a culture problem right there. And obviously, yeah, guns are involved in it. And you can't just say, well, it's a gun culture kind of thing. No, fuck you. I'm a part of the gun culture. I'm not out going around shooting at people just for the hell of it. I have multiple guns. Have I gone out and committed murder against people? Have I gone out and assaulted people with my guns? Absolutely not. So to say that there's a gun culture problem is bullshit in my opinion. What is a problem is a different type of culture, and it's a culture that involves hip hop and rap music. And rap music is inherently violent. Um, it's always talking about fighting and shooting and raping and killing and doing other illegal shit. And when you have people who grow up listening to that all the time and playing into that lifestyle, wanting to emulate those musicians who sing that stuff, and you put them all in a confined area and you give them alcohol and they're all on drugs, yeah, bad shit's going to happen. Like I said, you will see more often shootings occur at rap concerts and other events involving hip hop and rap music. You very rarely will see consistently shootings happening at country music concerts or at classical music concerts. It's not a gun problem. It's not a gun culture problem. It's a different kind of culture problem.
And so I hope we can all work together on that aspect of violence.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That it?
All right, so that's the end of that news conference. So I've already talked about the shooting itself. Everything's pretty good. Talked about those tactics, and then touched on the news release that was involved in here. Probably should have made it a second video, but I didn't. So it is what it is. If you like what you've seen and heard here, go ahead and give me a like and a share. If you have not already, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so that you can see more videos from me in the future. This is Earl Henderson with Primordial Defense on the Monday Quarterback Series. Thank you for watching.